The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gauri.
Good morning, this is Grace.
And of course, you are with us again on our second segment of today. So, what are we going to talk about, by the way?
We are talking about what happened almost the whole of last week leading up to the main event, but we will be focusing on the main thing itself, which is the ASEAN Summit 2015.
Yeah, it's actually the 26th Summit in Kuala Lumpur Convention Center. And what is interesting is there were several issues that were being raised, and of course, the most important part of it is the fact that you got all the prime ministers in all the 10 ASEAN countries were there, of course, discussing issues pertaining to ASEAN. And I think one of the key highlight of the ASEAN Summit is definitely the fact that it shows ASEAN as a whole can work together.
And at the same time, it was very noticeable to see that Malaysia has put a lot of effort for this ASEAN Summit, which was just held last week. And like you said, all the leaders came together to discuss certain issues and then to see how ASEAN as a whole unit can come up with the solutions for each issues that were raised.
But I think the main point that we want to highlight at this discussion is what has ASEAN, the 26th ASEAN Summit, achieved thus far. Before that, let's get an overview about the whole ASEAN Summit. The first day of the ASEAN Summit was actually many rounds of ministerial meetings. They were ministerial meetings on a few key areas. But I think one of the interesting area would be the special ASEAN ministerial meeting on radicalization. And countering radicalization is one of the newest aspect on ASEAN in addressing issues related to terrorism.
And most of this meeting were also closed door, and it was done in such high security and in secret. And the interesting thing, like you mentioned, apart from the threat that Southeast Asia is facing, they were also focusing a lot about the collaboration, or I would say the cooperation between ASEAN and EU, which is why we also had a couple of EU representatives who were there to discuss about the possibilities on how ASEAN and EU can possibly work together. Because as we have also mentioned a few times, we have also sort of analyze the differences between ASEAN and EU, how we're different, and that was also mentioned during the press conference that was held, that ASEAN and EU are two very different entities, but they can learn from each other and make up for the differences that each of the entity have, and work from there, and that way they can achieve a collaboration.
Well, like Ali mentioned just now shortly about how Malaysia and also ASEAN chairmanship year to strengthen the regional cooperation against the Islamic state threat that you mentioned about, which was been a very quite busy countering, including all this a summit itself. But Malaysia was already set to have this special ASEAN ministerial meeting on the radicalization and the extremism in October. But there was also discussion over, past a few meetings about the holding the informal ministerial meeting with countries like Brunei, Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, Australia, and New Zealand as well.
And another ministerial meeting that I thought was interesting, besides ministerial meeting on peace and security, is on economy. And one of the region that people seldom really talk about is the BIMYAGA region. The BIMYAGA senior official meeting was part of the whole ASEAN ministerial meeting. And the EU meeting also solidify EU's needs, EU's focus, I guess, on Southeast Asia. But as much as we want to talk about a lot of the countries that are involved in the interests of Southeast Asia, one country I think was lacking in terms of presence, and I think it was the US. If you notice, they were very much lacking in terms of any form of involvement.
And yeah, there was no, even at least no conspicuous representative from the U.S. and we didn't hear much any speeches or any presentation from the U.S. Representative. And this could also be because of how ASEAN is so closely working, just our relationship of ASEAN between China, that it seems more regionally focused. And but then again, the EU was present over there, and they had their own working framework on how they can actually contribute and be a part of ASEAN. But we didn't get that same feedback from the US.
And also, like you mentioned shortly, Gauri, there, the China's presence was quite noticeable. in the
Too
summit.
noticeable, in fact.
Too noticeable. Yeah. So perhaps that's the one of the reasons why we question how come we couldn't see the presence of USA at the summit.
I think there's also the security and issues that were one of the reason that the Chinese presence were much more. I think when it comes to Malaysia's foreign policy, we try to be as neutral as possible. Especially, we do not want to be seen as not being friendly. Should I say that? Being friendly with China. I think China's presence was very strong, partly because of the different trade agreements that Malaysia is signing in, or ASEAN is signing in with China. One of it is the RCEP, the AIIB, and many more.
And maybe let's talk about the AEC as well. Of course, that was one of the key points for most of the prime ministers, presidents, leaders of the country while they were giving their speech or their presentation. And a lot of them did their homework on how each country can actually leverage the AEC and make it work for them. And we heard from Laos, from Cambodia, and it seems that most of these countries of course, they have an idea of the AEC, and they are preparing their country to work to see how they can make the full use of AEC and its benefits, and how they can bring it back to their country. But then again, the criticism remains that AEC is only focused on the top level, and how can they actually bring it down to the grassroots itself. And of course, this is where also the ASEAN Business Advisory Council comes in, and they have also been talking about all their various efforts on how they are trying to increase the awareness on AEC.
So far, getting on interesting point that you brought about AEC, because I think AEC is one of the product that ASEAN has come about that is really one step forward in terms of trying to liberalize the trade and investment in this region. But I think a lot of the criticism comes in when you say just top level discussion, because when it comes to AEC, there's just so many barriers that they need to liberalize. And of course, the major haul would be the non-tariff barriers, and non-tariff barriers include like the ease of doing business in Southeast Asia, the free flow of movement of people, goods, services, and everything. And these are areas that ASEAN is still struggling to find a common ground in.
And then the summit also discussed all these initiatives, like I already mentioned, for the ASEAN integration. And you mentioned about all these non-tariff barriers. And definitely they dealt with the economic development gaps in the region. But they actually did not mention much about the ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Bank that was newly funded by China, and then the regional comprehensive
Maybe they did,
economic.
but it was closed door.
Perhaps they did. Yeah, you're right. The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership (RCEP), the summit concluded the talk about RCEP should be concluded by end of this year, 2015. But however, there are also concerns that were expressed regarding RCEP that could continue beyond 2015, and it could be mainly due to the negotiating difficulties with the certain RCEP negotiation parties. So quite a few concerns were expressed at the summit as well regarding all this free trade agreement.
And I would like to add on one more thing, because Grace kind of reminded me about what the whole summit was about. If we for those of you who paid close attention, you would notice that the one thing they kept mentioning over and over again is that how they want the ASEAN integration or the AEC itself to be people-centered.
Yeah, people-centered has been the majority theme of the day. But do you think so? Is people-centered?
Yeah, that's the whole deal here, where they keep mentioning over and over again that ASEAN this year is going to be people-centered. Everything, all the efforts, whether it's economic, infrastructure, or environmental issues, everything is going to be people-centered. People are going to be involved. But at the same time, there's also this whole issue about awareness. Even when the ASEAN summit took place in KL, I'm sure there were a ton of people in KL who were not aware that such a thing is going on, and that some very important and pressing key issues will be discussed at this ASEAN summit. So I'm sure there's a lot of challenges in making something like ASEAN or the AEC people-centered. It takes a lot of work for all the leaders of the country, but that's something that, since they have made the promise, they all came together and said, yes, this is going to be a people-centered ASEAN, especially in terms of the ASEAN integration. I guess they have to put in the work and walk the talk.
Mm-hmm. We will discuss more about the people-centered ASEAN, especially in relation with what do they mean by what do they define by people-centered ASEAN? Is this just purely like events that involve ASEAN people, or is it a real policy change or structural change in ASEAN and how they deal with human rights? We'll discuss that later. But on the area regarding on I would say regional affairs of ASEAN, we mentioned about the ASEAN economic community and ASEAN's relations with China and the lack of relations with the US, seems like. But also on the issue regarding on South China Sea, I think that was the majority theme of the day. If you look at how reporters were questioning leaders, the key questions were about, so what's ASEAN's position on the South China Sea?
And the South China Sea is something that has been discussed for a long time. And there are still a lot of questions because quite many people know that China has been being very aggressive towards the South China Sea, like building their own buildings and to mark their territories.
And their own airspace, right? Our airways. It's crazy to learn that how China have been quite strong in terms of trying to ensure the territory itself is theirs and theirs own.
And not only that they are brave and strong, they have also asserted over and over again that what they're doing is completely legal, and they have they're actually the rightful claimants to all this place that they're trying to push for.
So they are brave?
Yeah, they are brave. Very
in
out
a good
there.
way.
And another thing that also I noticed in the news were either today or yesterday, that it seems China does not want to have a regional cooperation. They do not want to solve this on a regional level. They're like, if I have a problems with Philippines and Vietnam, let me just solve this with Philippines and Vietnam. And I think
it's very bilateral, right?
Yeah, and I think they're considering ASEAN probably even as a busybody for interfering in the South China Sea issue. And that calls for even more questions because, of course, Philippines and Vietnam are in the region. And if these countries have a problem, ASEAN has every right to come together and question China. But China does not seem to be happy about that. And they think that all these other countries should just sort of mind their own business and let China deal with these two countries themselves.
I think when it comes to the way how ASEAN deal, majority of the ASEAN countries are really concerned about this. In fact, extremely concerned to the fact that Malaysia had said the only way to solve it is to have a code of conduct and to follow through the international or the universal principle of trying to the UN universal principle. I think it's the UN law of the sea. And I think for the UN clause, it's definitely a good way of settling dispute. And in fact, the Philippines, as we mentioned earlier on in our reporting, has filed complaints to UN regarding on this. But I don't think China respect UN as the way of Southeast Asia would respect UN in terms of being the center of conflict resolution.
I don't think they respect anyone at all, whether it's UN or ASEAN. Grace wants to add on something.
No, I was about to say that China is very aggressive, and then they're also very forceful when it comes to these territorial issues. And it looks like Malaysia is not ready to confront China to solve this issue. In fact, our Prime Minister mentioned that we hope to be able to influence China. That is it also to their interest and not to be seen as confronting ASEAN, and that any attempts to destabilize this region will not benefit China either. So he was just sort of standing at the neutral point when it comes to South China Sea. But however, as ASEAN, as a team, we should come up with this something to actually solve this long-term issues with just the South China Sea, because otherwise China will just keep on going and then do what they need to do to conquer this region.
I agree with you, Grace. I think ASEAN should do something about this, but at the same time, I think we should be very, very careful, since China has already come forward and expressed their this dislike or dissatisfaction about ASEAN interfering in the matter. And of course, they are the big brother in this region, as Arlene always likes to say. And we do not want to step on the wrong stone and risk whatever safety that we have in this region. And of course, we want to also maintain our relationship, ASEAN relationship with China, and therefore we want to, of course, still confront China about this, and ASEAN has every right to do that, but we have to tread very carefully.
One of the interesting point that Najib raised during his speech was ASEAN centrality. I think this is I would say the approach that ASEAN wants to go for when it comes to how it deals with other countries. ASEAN centrality means a strong and united ASEAN. It's something like unity in diversity, something like that, which is a friendly, an ASEAN that is friendly and believe in cooperative engagement with all countries. Provides the framework for the maintenance of regional peace and stability. This was directly quoted from Najib's speech. I guess just to extend to what you mentioned earlier, that ASEAN centrality is definitely the way forward and how to deal with China, because we want to maintain our friendliness, the ASEAN way they call it, but we also want to be firm on how we deal with issues in this region, and I think China needs to respect that in a way.
The respect from China is still under our questions, but but yeah, definitely when it comes to relationship with the other region and also including China, ASEAN still needs to work harder for that, for sure.
But China aside, I think what we hope to talk about more is how Southeast Asia is going to deal with key issues in the future, and of course it is going to deal with through its blueprint, which is the ASEAN post 2015. We are not sure yet how the ASEAN post 2015 would look like, but in terms of dealing with external security or threats, it's definitely part of the agenda of ASEAN.
I think when it comes to post ASEAN 2015, another thing that I remember from one of the speakers who said that when we talk about post 2015, it's not like you're gonna wake up on the 1st January 2016 and everything is gonna be different, the economy is gonna be different. It's not a destination, it's more of a journey
or process,
and a long process that we are working, like you were mentioning earlier. ASEAN is working hard to remove a lot of barriers to make it easier for trade and businesses to take place, but that of course doesn't happen overnight. It probably doesn't even happen in one whole year, and that takes a longer time for it to be implemented.
If I were to put it in other terms, it's similar to Malaysia plan. You know, Malaysia have its plan for the next 5 years, but this is for the next 10 years. What is ASEAN post 2015 would be. And one of the key area is ASEAN connectivity, and also trying to liberalize ASEAN in a way that is in line with the ASEAN economic community. liberalizing the trade, the aviation policy, the movement of goods and services, in terms of getting more free trade agreements, and of course one of the key area that people seldom talk about, which is to strengthen ASEAN Secretariat, which is actually quite underfunded, in fact.
But comparing that to what they have in the EU, it seems that our secretariat is not that strong, and because of that, that's probably why we have all these unresolved issues, or it's probably why we take so long to address something the moment it pops up. There's no proper mechanism or framework that we can immediately refer to, or just bring it over to this group of people and like, okay, this is the issue that we're facing, so where can we go from here? And we still do not have that going for ASEAN.
So when it comes to ASEAN, and then we attended ASEAN Summit recently, there are so many issues, not only to touch on the economic or political side, but we also have a lot other issues in the socio-cultural side, and also regarding environmental and human rights issue. And in fact, those issues were raised by a certain group of people at the ASEAN Summit. And then those issues need to be heard and work as ASEAN as a team.
Yeah, we will mention about what are those groups of people actually raise at our second break, after our break, where we will talk about all the different interface meetings that happen and the issues that were raised.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gauri.
And of
Welcome
course,
back, this is Grace.
oh my God, Grace!
Sorry about
Yes.
Grace, Arlene.
Almost forgotten.
Grace, you need to like move here a little bit so everyone can see.
Yeah, I only
Yeah.
see like India and China, but not
Just
Korea.
because Korea is not in
Right.
ASEAN, is it?
No, just kidding about it. But to continue our discussion today, we talked so much about ASEAN's ASEAN Summit, and of course its foreign policy, especially on the issue of South China Sea, and of course on the ASEAN economic community. But let's focus on things that we seldom talk about when it comes to ASEAN. I think the key issue would be human rights and also environmental issues. You want to start off, Kauri?
Well, I guess human rights will definitely bring us back to the ASEAN People's Forum that took place from Wednesday to Thursday, or was it Friday? Well, the whole week itself was dedicated solely to human rights issues, and it was amazing to see delegations from pretty much all over Southeast Asia, especially the CLMV countries, where I think they have the most severe or extreme human rights issues, and they were all there because they wanted to share, and they wanted people from other countries to know that the government is always trying to paint a pretty picture of the country, as always in any other country itself, but they wanted people to know what was really happening behind those pretty sceneries, behind closed doors. They wanted people to know their real plight and their real suffering.
A lot of people might not realize, but ASEAN do have a mechanism to address human rights, which is called AICHR, ASEAN Intergovernmental Human Rights Commission. But the problem is, it's still being seen as a toothless tiger, in a way that people are not sure how to address issue. The mechanism doesn't really work that well. In fact, so far when it comes to the cases that have been brought into AICHR and being, I would say, not necessarily solved, but being taken on by AICHR is zero. So it's still very much work in progress when it comes to addressing human rights issue. But remember you said about the people-centered ASEAN. So the ASEAN People's Forum is one of the very rare, very few forums that really talk about the people in ASEAN. And the sad thing was, the ASEAN People's Forum was only started 10 years ago, and it was started by our former Prime Minister Tun Abdullah Badawi. So in all this while, human rights issue has never been thoroughly addressed or raised, either at the ASEAN Summit level or at the grassroots level, in the level that would be regional.
And why is it? I call it's a dilemma when it comes to ASEAN and human rights, because we people in ASEAN, we are aware that there are certain issues. Like in Myanmar, we have Rohingya issues, we have environmental issues. But however, as much as people are trying and putting their efforts to voice out and send their messages to the government, there's a sort of like barrier between the government and the public. When they're there, it's either the messages are filtered or it's not sent straight to the government to be heard. And then the solutions from the government or ASEAN, the government itself, it's not so up to our expectations.
It's a bit superficial, is what you mean.
I agree with Grace. In fact, probably during all the presentations were happening, perhaps our Prime Minister should be there so he gets the first-hand account. That of course probably sounds a little too far-fetched. I know he has a lot of other important things to take care of, but at the end of the day, he did promise that this was going to be a people-centered ASEAN as the chairman of ASEAN 2015. So, like what Grace said, there does really seem to be a barrier between the People's Forum and also the ASEAN Summit, and the information doesn't always get to where it's supposed to be. And if all these people in power are not the ones who are aware of all these little issues that are going on, how is it ever going to be addressed or solved?
I totally agree with you. In fact, a lot of the declaration or even resolution that come out on the ASEAN Summit or even events that the ASEAN Summit have been suggesting, people on the ground or people, at least people in the ASEAN People's Forum, has very little clue about this. In fact, the issue seems to be greatly detached from the issues that were discussed in the ASEAN People's Forum. I give example of the ASEAN People's Award. I was asking the chairman of the ASEAN People's Forum, do you know about this? Are you being consulted about this? And his name was Gerard Joseph. He said that he has no clue. This is the first time he ever heard it during the speech of Prime Minister Najib Razak. So it shows that there's a huge disconnection between the civil society in Southeast Asia and the governments in ASEAN.
And I think we should actually, if not any other year, this year should be the year of civil societies, if I may, because this is the year that our theme is supposed to be people, and we're also repeating it as much as it was repeated throughout the whole week, that this will be a people-centered ASEAN. The ASEAN integration is going to be people-friendly. We're going to reach out to the people, and they will be consulted on various levels, and because the whole idea of this civil society is coming up is, of course, it goes back to human rights, and human rights concerns the people, and therefore I think that the ASEAN People's Forum should be given probably just as much importance as the ASEAN Summit if they are really serious about making it people-centered.
Yeah, I mean, the definition of a people-centered ASEAN, according to at least Prime Minister Najib Razak in his speech at the opening of the ASEAN Summit, was he wants people in ASEAN feel that they are not just part of ASEAN, but that regardless of who they are, from rice farmers to forex dealers, halal business owners, fishermen, and electronics engineers, the ASEAN citizens actually feel that they are ASEAN and the future is their future. So if that is what the Malaysian government or the ASEAN governments feel so, I think they should remove themselves or from just addressing issues with just creating platforms, events platform like what they are suggesting, having ASEAN Business Investment Summit, One ASEAN Entrepreneurship Summit, SME Showcase, and ASEAN Young Leaders Summit. That's how governments are thinking about what a people-centered ASEAN is supposed to be, which is, you make as many events as possible and invite as many people as possible. But the real issue of a people-centered ASEAN is not about creating platforms. It's about addressing core human rights concern, and this means you need to tackle certain policy issues, certain power structure.
I wanted to say that You're right there that when we went there, ASEAN Summit, the platforms were already provided for them to actually give talks and share their opinions. But however, my question here is, how come the holders high authority people or from the government itself, they do not talk about it from their point of view? It's always the organizations or the group of people who will raise the issues. However, how come they will definitely know about all these issues. They've heard about this, but however but how come they don't really talk about the issues from their point of view to address and then also to invite them over to have the communication flow?
And I want to add more about the the ASEAN People's Forum. A lot of people might not know some governments, especially governments in CLMV, they actually sabotage their own civil society, and these are human rights concerns that ASEAN need to raise at the ASEAN Summit there. I give example of one of the forum regarding on some minority religious groups in Vietnam. Some of them were so scared that they have to conceal their identity at the People's Forum because there's a conflict between the government-sponsored civil society and the independent civil society, since civil society in Vietnam are virtually banned. You cannot form your own civil society without without the approval of the Vietnamese government, and everything has to be coming from the government. So
And a lot of them were fearing the gongos as well, which I also wasn't sure what it meant at first.
it means government.
Government organized NGOs, and it seems that a part of the delegation there were also some of these gongos who were actually present, and the civil societies themselves actually went up during the Q&A session to come forward and just say that I know that there are gongos here who are listening, but I still want people to know that this is happening in my country, and we want this issue to stop. And you can go back and tell whoever who sent you here.
I think the elephant in the room when it comes to criticism towards ASEAN would be the principle of non-confrontational, which I think some civil society are trying to highlight it, but it's not prominent enough. I remember at the ASEAN People's Forum, it was one of their press statement of asking or demanding ASEAN to review back the non-confrontational principle. But of course, to no avail. Nobody's talking about it in the media.
But then again, going back to Malaysia, when it comes to all these human rights issues, issues of migrant workers who are here, who are not protected, who are not cared for, I think one of the reasons why we're not also addressing this is because if we do actually address it, it's going to backfire on us, because somehow or other over the years, indirectly, we have actually employed a lot of these migrant workers, whether legally or illegally, and they have become quite an important human resource in Malaysia. So and we are just being ignorant about it. They're pretty much everywhere, and they're running most of the shops, restaurants.
I actually have a theory on this. I think there's a deficit of knowledge and conscience. I mean, you can say that I'm a good person, but then going out to the office, driving by, you see some migrant workers, with their bikes cycling to their workplace, the same it is, and you look at their face, they look clearly unhappy, but you don't do anything. Of course, this is from a citizen's point of view, but from the ASEAN's point of view, I think we lack the consciousness, the awareness, and also the most important thing, the knowledge on how to address this problem. We just close one eye, and then it becomes a human rights problem, because nobody is taking steps to solve issues of unskilled workers. Their rights are not being protected. Even in AEC, the clause is skilled workers, not workers in general.
And not only that, but then their rights to stay in one country, those are the foreigners after all, but then they have a right to be protected when they are in the different countries. But I wouldn't say nobody. There are group of people who actually do want to voice out these problems, but it's just that the flow of communication somehow just cuts in the middle, and it doesn't really send out to the government or the high authorities. So where and how are we going to tackle these issues? Not only all those workers, unskilled workers, but how about the poverty issues? How about inequality issues? How about the women's issue, religion issue? There are so many issues that are under the umbrella of human rights. But then ASEAN, where is our people-centered focus?
My suggestion actually would be to increase the funding, and sadly to increase the funding meaning that we might have to take some money from the AIIB and other investment sources, because I think ASEAN has one of the smallest ASEAN Secretariat. It cannot solve a lot of the hardcore issues that we raise today because it's too small to be able to do so. It has a huge deficit of knowledge and skills to do so. So in order for them to address this, they have to go beyond just, coming up with an ASEAN post 2015, but they have to think about strategically how they can create this connectivity of infrastructure, people and resources and knowledge.
And I think even at the leadership forum that we attended, I know we didn't hear from all the 10 countries,
The
but
ASEAN Leadership Forum, organized by ASLI.
yeah, that's right. And although all the 10 leaders from 10 countries were not present, there were only about 5 of them, but it seems that most of them were just focusing on AEC and the economic benefits, and it was only Philippines that actually touched on human rights issues. And I think that should be what every other leader is doing. Of course, AEC is important, and you want to have that you want to leverage that economic benefits to your people, to your country, but at the same time, I wish they would have a balance when they talk about the AEC, and then also address whatever human rights issues that's going on in their country or anywhere else in ASEAN.
Human rights is one thing. I think these are a long-standing issue that has never been really tackled thoroughly. But I guess when you mentioned about the AEC, did you notice not just the US president was lacking, the discussion on TPPA was lacking as well. Seems like people would rather talk about the AIIB Bank, RCEP, China's presence, South China Sea, but not TPPA, or how American and ASEAN business deal can be a good thing for ASEAN. I mean, the discourse seems to be completely lacking.
I think TPPA is another controversial thing that if you remember, when it was first introduced, a lot of people were not happy about it. There were protests all over the region, in Indonesia, in Philippines, in Malaysia itself, and a few other countries. And this is another good example of how there is a huge barrier between the ruling community and the people themselves, because the government thought it was good for us, but we didn't know why, and a lot of people didn't know why, which is why they all held protest, and nothing was done to explain to these people, to say that this is the benefits. And all we knew was the surface level information, and from there alone it seemed that TPPA wasn't good for Southeast Asia or for the individual countries itself. And I guess that's also why TPP is not a very popular topic in Southeast Asia, that we would rather talk about RCEP or AIIB compared to the TPP.
And anyway, we'll take one short break. When we return, we'll talk about other interesting side topics that is not necessarily that hardcore, like human rights and TPPA or RCEP or even AEC.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gauri.
Hello, this is Grace.
And of course, we are back again at our ASEAN Summit discussion. So, Grace, I know you are excited on this part.
So what? Looking at Gauri and then you Grace.
Yeah, actually, I'm talking about Grace. So anyway, there's this one initiative by the private sector, but it was introduced at the ASEAN Summit that got you excited about this.
Yes, I was very excited. Grace was so happy to hear about this TV channel called the Go ASEAN, which I wanted to actually know more about this particular program, and it will be air in June this year under Astro. And Go ASEAN, as the name is says, it will be all about the ASEAN culture, travel, food, where they'll be focusing on the Southeast Asia. So there was these two hosts from Go ASEAN at the lunch at ASEAN Summit. They came up, and then they even showed the whole hologram of the whole Go ASEAN program, and then they were introducing about the program. So it sounded very exciting, and a lot of people will watch this, hopefully watch this program.
My biggest question is why only now? They could have done it like 3 years ago.
That is true.
But I guess in the whole advent of the ASEAN integration and all, this is the year that people are really starting to take ASEAN seriously,
Yeah.
which is a good thing. And of course, I do agree with you. They are a bit too late.
Yeah, I
that
mean, they could have started when AirAsia took off as the number one choice airline in Southeast Asia.
I guess not everyone could be as visionary as Mr. Tony Fernandez, that they saw the potential.
It's
He
Tan
saw the
Sri Tony
potential. Tan
Fernandez.
Sri Tony
No,
Fernandez.
just kidding about it.
He saw the potential in ASEAN a long time ago, but I guess for different companies or different CEOs, they tend to look at things differently. But it's still a great initiative, and of course, as it says here, it has the potential to reach 600 million viewers. This is according to the potential population from the ASEAN integration itself, because the viewers will be able to access this through, of course, not only at home, but through hotel rooms, airports, and even as an in-flight entertainment.
And besides the Go ASEAN channel, I think the two other major highlights with mixed reviews were the common time zone and also the ASEAN immigration lane, which I think probably you guys have seen it whenever you pass by the airport. But I'm giving this a big question mark, because I'm not sure how the governments are going to agree and implement this. And I think it's a good thing, but at the same time, is it really necessary? That's another thing to altogether.
Well, ASEAN, talking about ASEAN immigration, that zone and airplane, I've seen a few people actually passing by, and then especially the businessmen with the suitcases, they were proudly present their passport, and I think it works, but not many people are still aware. They question, what is that lane? And why is it like situated there when we can just pass using the local pass? So I think the awareness of this needs to be delivered properly to the public.
I think the ASEAN lane definitely helps to give an identity, because usually when you go to the airport, you're either local or you're a foreigner. But this ASEAN lane is sort of reintroducing the whole identity to you. So you know that you're Malaysian, but at the same time you still have a choice to go to the ASEAN lane because you belong to one of the countries in Southeast Asia, and that also sort of gives probably a little privilege to people in the region and gives them a little more of an ASEAN identity.
Yeah, that's good, Gauri. But I guess I'm a bit skeptical when it comes to all this interesting initiative, but I'm not sure whether it really contributes towards the ASEAN identity, at least from my own personal view.
So my question is there also, what's the purpose of having that other than having the ASEAN identity? After all, it's all about, you travel outside of Malaysia, so you can simply just use, if you're Malaysian, you can just go to the local lane rather than just go to ASEAN lane. What if there's so many ASEAN people there and it's jammed in the one lane? It could also happen in the future. So have they actually considered about that when they actually set up the lane?
And I think there should be follow-up efforts as well. I'm actually quite positive about the ASEAN lane, but I don't think that it should stop there. That we should probably have more follow-up efforts to that and have more ASEAN-centered initiatives, and in that way it's more consistent and people can relate to ASEAN better.
And I think another area that we missed out in our earlier discussion, but I just want to give a bit of a shout out, is the climate change agreement that was signed between all the ASEAN leaders. And I think it's a great thing that finally ASEAN leaders are talking talking about climate change and addressing issues, especially issues that affects our environment, especially when we have so many issues regarding on haze, regarding on floods, water pollution. Southeast Asia is one of the dirtiest rivers. So these are great challenges that ASEAN needs to tackle immediately, and I'm glad that they all came together on this. So with
just a little bit of mention of the time zone.
Yeah.
Right. It is a lot of people are still question after it was addressed by our PM at this ASEAN summit. What is this common time zone? But if you think about it, ASEAN has 4 different time zones, and then the idea would get other like ASEAN members to adjust the time to single agreed one. So most likely the current time zone in Brunei, like Malaysia, Philippines, or in Singapore, which has the GMT +8.
Yeah,
it's similar to one in China as well. So the alignment would actually sort of help to facilitate the business dealings, and as well as to help to forge more cohesive ASEAN community expected by the end of this year.
Sorry to kill the idea, but to me it's really not something necessary.
Well, I would have to agree with Arlene on this one. I think that to facilitate trade and businesses, they should focus on the non-tariff barriers that we were talking about, and the time zone is probably
the least that we worry about.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all from us today. Thank you for listening to our Durian Heat, and of course, stay tuned with us for next week, where we bring you more news and more discussion from Southeast Asia.
That's right. And also don't forget to follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the daily podcasts.
And also the tune in, right?
Yeah, so when you're just on go, or when you drive, or just walking, please download our TuneIn app. In fact, we're developing our own app, but before that, do download our TuneIn app and look for us at Durian ASEAN.
Thank you.